Shasta Groene was the only person who survived the murdering of the Groene family in 2005. The murder happened 18 years ago, but left tragedies to the girl who was 8 years old when she lost her family. The case was so terrible, and the murderer is also a terrible guy. Considering him a monster for his behavior. His name is Joseph E. Duncan III. Without further ado, let's hop in the case that shocked the news in the U.S. in 2005.
Joseph Duncan walked up to him with the gun and he was like, "No, please don't," and then he shot him in the head.
Everything started on May 15, 2005. When Shasta Groene saw the killer drive his car past their house with a suspicious stare at her and her older brother named Dylan playing in the yard.
We had a barbecue and we had family there, and so we just went to sleep like it was a normal night. The next day we had to wake up for...
The killer, Duncan, after that stopped his car nearby and silently stalked the house. Shasta said that in the same night, she felt like someone was in her wardrobe, so she called her brother to come to her room to protect her. They fell asleep.
Promised that we're gonna make it out alive. So, that was,
Hours later, her mom woke her and Dylan up. Her mom cried. She told Shasta that there was someone in their house. Shasta and Dylan came downstairs just to see their stepfather and stepbrother being tied around their arms. Tape was stuck to their mouths. Duncan at that time wearing a black costume, holding his gun pointing at their mom's head like he's about to shoot her if the two kids do something. The killer Duncan after that also tied the arms of two innocent kids, locked them in a room. Shasta remembered that she heard the sound of bloody strike, hitting painfully that made their stepfather, stepbrother, and their mom screaming in agony. She was so scared. She was an 8-year-old kid. She didn't know what happened that time. That night was the night Shasta lost her family. Duncan killed 3 of them mercilessly. The killer committed a killing crime within less than 5 hours. He killed 3 of them with a hammer, slamming them in their heads until they died. After he did such things, he kidnapped 2 kids and went away before anyone could find out what happened to the Groone's family. Her brother, whose name is Dylan, 9 years old, also was shot in the head. In 7 weeks after he killed their family, he tortured and sexually abused their body. They were just kids. In the time Duncan committed these bloody crimes, he was escaping from child sexual abuse in Minnesota State. Before that, Duncan was also admitted that he killed 2 girls in Seattle, but he was not accused. I also have to mention that he killed a guy named Anthony Bermott in California in 1997. He was such a monster that no one could have imagined of. Duncan started his crime pretty soon when he was 15. In 1980, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison for sexually assaulting a young boy in Tacoma, and as a result he spent 6 years of his adult life in prison. He was released on parole in 1994 but was sent back to prison in 1997 for violating the terms of his parole. Back to the case of the video, what happened next would be considered a miracle that Shasta survived from the claws of the killer. Vivid details are narrated by Shasta during her rescue. Some miracle kept Duncan from killing her even though he strangled her tightly. He gave me the choice of being killed by strangulation or by gun. I begged Duncan to stop, called his nickname Jet, and he immediately spared me. That's how the 8-year-old Shasta that day miraculously escaped death without anyone thinking. Duncan said he wanted to take me to North Dakota to meet his mother and family, Shasta said. This is how this smart girl gradually escaped the door of death. At the time, I was trying to gain the trust of that bastard Duncan and make him believe I didn't want to leave him. I said I wanted to show him things where I grew up, went to school, used to hang out. Basically, I would show him my life because I don't have a family. On the day Shasta was rescued, Duncan drove her back to the area near her home, Coeur d'Alene, where the streets were filled with signs looking for her and her brother Dylan. He asked me if she was hungry and she said she wasn't very hungry. But Duncan said, "Come on, we can go to Denny's and get a milkshake or something." After that, Shasta and him went to the restaurant to take a break. A guy in that shop seemed to recognize Shasta. She tried to use I language to confirm to the other guy that it was her, who was on the poster that was posted everywhere and needed help. Immediately, that guy talked about this with the waiter. The guy in the shop and the waiter immediately realized Shasta is the girl who was lost from the poster all over the road. They later called the police and told them their address so that the police could arrest Duncan, and they also tried to keep Duncan staying in the restaurant as long as possible. Minutes later, the police arrived, arrested Duncan. Shasta was saved because of her intelligence. Later, authorities took her to Kootenay Medical Center for medical treatment and was reunited with her biological father. Police officers in Coeur d'Alene, meanwhile, arrested Duncan on kidnapping charges and his federal arrest warrant. Police also found the bones of Dylan on July 4, 2005, located near a camp zone, near St. Regis, Montana. The bones were sent to the FBI lab in Quantico, Virginia for DNA testing and confirmed that this is the bones of Shasta's older brother, Dylan. The killer in the court admitted that he shot Dylan with a gun in his head. Duncan also admitted that he killed a total of 7 people and 5% of them were kids. In October 2020, Duncan underwent brain surgery after he was diagnosed with glioblastoma. He declined any treatment and rejected chemotherapy and radiation therapy. Medical staff at the Federal Bureau of Prison estimated he had between 6 and 12 months left to live. He died on March 28, 2021, at the age of 58. His body was cremated. Talk about Shasta. After she survived from the claws of the monster, she had to stand up and live a new life. She used to be absent from school to dodge the camera and any paparazzi that asked her about the case of her family. Although she lived with her father, years later, her father passed away due to throat cancer. The survivor's guilt haunted that little girl. There were so many misfortunes that happened to her at such a young, sensitive age that easily created scars that could never heal. She said that she promised to her brother Dylan that they would survive together, but Dylan. However, after many bad things happened to her. Now, she is the mother of 4 sons. She still continues to live and is still trying to cure the pain in the past that the killer left. "I have kids and every day I have to wake up to be a mother," Shasta continued. Shasta has been hiding for 17 years. Since being noticed as an 8-year-old girl, witnessing the tragedy of the family. Recently, she accepted to participate in a special program in the first issue of People magazine Investigates as the main character sharing about her painful life. Groene hopes that by sharing her story, others who have experienced trauma will be empowered to never give up as they rebuild their lives.